Welcome to the deep dive, your kind of shortcut to getting really well informed on a topic.
Yeah, we dive into the sources so you don't have to.
Exactly. And today we are unpacking Charles Duhigg's Supercommunicators, how to unlock the secret language of connection. Oh, and this deep dive is brought to you by Ben's Book Summaries.
Nice.
So our mission, like always, is pretty simple. Pull out the core ideas, the stories that stick with you, and figure out why this book actually matters for you, for your conversations.
Right. We've gone through it, pulled out the key bits of research, the main takeaways. We're ready to give you the insights into what really makes conversations work.
And maybe how to become one of those people who just connect.
Exactly.
That's super.
The communicator.
Okay, so for a long time, I think we all thought talking was just, swapping words. I say something, you hear it, done.
Simple transaction.
Right. But Supercommunicators argues it's way, way more complex. It draws on some pretty cool science, actually.
Yeah, it involves like your body language, the kinds of questions you ask, even being aware of emotions.
It reminds me of that George Bernard Shaw quote, something like, the biggest problem with communication
Is the illusion it has taken place.
Yeah,
Classic.
totally. And how often does that happen? You walk away thinking, nailed it, we're on the same page, and then later you find out, nope, miles apart.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really wild is the stuff about neurological synchronization.
Okay, tell me more about that. Synchronization.
Yeah, like think about musicians playing together, totally in sync.
Mm-hmm.
Their brains are almost like humming the same tune. Scientists found that in really good conversations, our brains and even our bodies start to align.
How so? Like what aligns?
Things like breathing patterns, even getting goosebumps at the same time.
Goosebumps. Seriously. That's amazing.
It is. And these supercommunicators, they seem to make this happen, this kind of shared mental space,
Yeah.
almost without trying.
Wow. It makes you think about those conversations where you just click with someone, you feel totally heard.
Yeah, like you're on the same wavelength. Your brains are kind of doing the same dance.
So the book talks about studies on this. Groups with this high neural synchrony.
Yes, exactly. One study looked at groups talking about video clips.
Yeah.
And the groups that synced up the most. It wasn't the ones with like a loud, dominant leader taking over.
Oh, interesting. So who was it then?
It was people, the researchers called high centrality participants.
Yeah.
Think of them as maybe conversational conductors.
Okay, conductors. I like that. So what were they doing? What made them central?
Well, interestingly, they often spoke less than the dominant types.
Huh.
But when they spoke, it was often to ask questions. Real questions showing curiosity.
Not just rhetorical ones.
Right. And they'd repeat what someone else said, maybe in their own words, to check they understood.
Okay, like active listening.
Yeah. And they weren't afraid to say, hang on, I'm a bit confused, or even laugh at themselves if they misspoke. They encouraged others, like, oh, that's interesting, tell me more.
So they weren't necessarily the loudest or even the one with all the ideas?
Not at all. They just made it easier for everyone else to jump in, for the conversation to, flow. They smooth things out.
They sound like the unsung heroes of good chats.
Yeah.
The book had some examples, right? Like discussing a movie scene.
Yeah, the bathtub scene. That was a great little illustration. Someone just asked, wait, what was that scene about? Another person admits they were lost too. People laugh a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Then someone offers an idea and the conductor jumps in. Like, oh, interesting. Maybe even admitting they don't know a word someone used, but they stay with the idea.
So it shows how being open and curious, maybe a little vulnerable, keeps things moving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And helps everyone connect. There was another bit about predicting the movie's ending, too. Same kind of dynamic.
Just someone asking a genuine question, wanting to hear opinions, and then really listening and prompting for more.
Yeah, it's not about having the answers yourself. It's about drawing out what everyone thinks.
Makes sense.
And this leads into a really, really helpful idea in the book. The 3 types of conversations.
Okay, what are they?
So Duhigg argues conversations tend to fall into one of 3 buckets. There's the what's this really about conversation. That's practical stuff, facts, decisions, problem solving.
Got it, like planning a project.
Exactly. Then there's the how do we feel conversation. That's all about emotions, understanding feelings, offering support.
Okay, more personal.
And finally, the who are we conversation. This one digs into identity, values, beliefs, how we see ourselves and each other in the world.
Right. This feels like a game changer because you can totally be having one type of conversation while the other person is having another.
That is the crucial point. That misalignment is often why things go wrong. You're trying to solve a problem. What's this about? But the other person needs to talk about their feelings, How do we feel?
And you just talk past each other.
Completely.
Yeah.
So the key is recognizing which conversation you're actually in, or which one the other person needs to be in, and trying to match that.
So next time things feel off, you can ask yourself, okay, wait, are we solving, feeling, or identifying here?
Just having that awareness can make a huge difference for you. These types often mix, but figuring out the main current is vital.
And the book stresses it's about matching, not just mimicking, right? It's not about being a parrot.
Absolutely not.
Mm.
Mimicry can feel fake. True matching is about genuinely getting where someone's coming from, their feelings, needs, identity, and then sharing yourself authentically in return. It's about real connection.
Which brings us to that amazing story about the CIA recruiter, Jim Lawler, trying to recruit Yasmin.
Oh yeah, that's a fantastic anecdote.
He tried all the standard approaches, right, by the book, and it just didn't work.
Totally flat. He was getting nowhere. It wasn't until he just sort of broke character.
And had that moment of honesty, saying his life feels empty.
Yeah, that raw vulnerability, that's what changed everything. Suddenly there was trust.
It's so counterintuitive, isn't it? Especially for a CIA guy, you'd think projecting strength is key.
But it was the authentic self-disclosure that built the bridge. And, well, ultimately led to him getting the job offer from the CIA because he showed he could connect.
It really drives home the power of being genuine.
It does, and it leads nicely into what Duhigg calls learning conversations and the rules for them. The first rule is so simple, but powerful.
Which is?
Pause before you speak and ask yourself, why am I opening my mouth?
Oof, that's a good one. How often do you just jump in without thinking about the goal?
Exactly. What do you actually want from this interaction? Are you trying to decide something? Share feelings, understand their view. If you don't know, you're just reacting.
The book mentions that study about meetings where people wrote down their goals.
Yeah, just writing down, okay, my goal for this chat is X, led to fewer arguments and people feeling more satisfied. Just that tiny bit of intention.
Focuses the mind, I guess. Okay, and then there's the jury story, Leroy Reed's case. Bully, the supercommunicator in the jury room.
Ah, Bully. A masterclass. That was a classic what's this really about situation, but with really strong opposing views on guilt or innocence.
So how did Bully handle it? He didn't just argue his point.
No, not at all. He started by asking questions. Tons of questions. Trying to figure out what each juror actually cared about underneath the surface.
Like what?
Well, some were focused on morality, some on the exact wording of the law, some worried about setting a precedent, and honestly, some were just bored and wanted to go home.
Huh. Okay, so he diagnosed the room.
Pretty much. And then he started guiding the discussion. Instead of just guilty, not guilty, he framed it like, okay, what are the different ways we could analyze these questions? He shifted the focus.
He was negotiating the process of deciding.
Precisely. Even with Carl, the fireman, who was stuck on his logical interpretation. Boozy didn't fight him head on.
What did he do?
He asked Carl to explain his reasoning more. Like, really dive deep. He connected it to Carl's background, his analytical thinking as a fireman. He drew him out.
That's smart. It shows that these what's this really about talks, especially negotiations, aren't just about winning. They're about finding agreement on the issues and how you'll decide.
Right. Like the Harvard negotiation project idea, expanding the pie, not just dividing it. Finding solutions where everyone feels heard and gets something they need.
Which means you really have to listen for clues. What matters to them? Are they telling stories, making jokes, focusing on plans?
Those are all signals about their mindset. And the Harvard research, again, just preparing a few potential topics beforehand, even if you don't use them, makes you less anxious and helps the chat flow better. Preparation helps.
Okay, so that's the practical stuff. Then the book shifts gears to how do we feel conversations and that Nicholas Epley presentation to Wall Street investors.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You've got these super analytical finance types.
Right, supposedly all about logic and numbers.
And Epley goes in talking about listening and emotions, but he's clever about it.
How so?
He knows they won't respond to, like, fluffy prompts. So he focuses on teaching them specific, seemingly non-emotional questions that actually get people to open up about their feelings.
Like the story about him talking to his own parents?
Exactly. He realized he'd never truly heard their emotions until he asked different kinds of questions. His parents tried to guess how he felt perspective taking, but it didn't really work.
They were assuming, not asking.
Right. The counselor he spoke to, though, asked direct questions that made Epley reflect on his own feelings. Asking is way better than guessing. That's a key thing for you, the listener, to remember.
The book mentions Aaron's Fast Friends procedure, those 36 questions.
Yeah, the ones designed to build closeness super fast in lab.
But it warns against just, like, pulling them out on a date or something.
Oh, God, no. That would be incredibly awkward. They work through structured, reciprocal self-disclosure in a specific setting. But Epley's research does show that even just asking a few deeper, more thoughtful questions than usual can really boost connection.
So it's about making space for vulnerability, acknowledging emotions that aren't always spoken aloud.
Yes, like how the writers on The Big Bang Theory used the characters' interactions, the contrast between them, to signal feelings no one was actually saying. And a huge part of these how do we feel conversations is matching mood and energy, noticing tone, gestures, facial expressions.
Emotional intelligence, basically.
Right, and laughter is a big signal here. Provine's research showed it's often less about the joke and more about signaling, I want to connect with you. Genuine shared laughter involves matching that energy.
Like the astronaut candidate example. The successful ones match the interviewer's emotional cues.
Exactly. They seemed emotionally attuned, whereas others just seemed like they were trying too hard to please, which came across as less genuine.
Okay, this naturally leads into handling conflict. The Melanie Jeffcoat story, the gun debate participant, that was powerful.
Super powerful, because it shows connection is possible even across huge divides. The whole point of that dialogue wasn't conversion, it was just civil conversation.
And Jeffcoat, having survived gun violence, was understandably wary of talking to gun rights advocates.
Deeply skeptical. And John Godfrey, the Army vet and gun owner on the other side, he was wary too, thinking it was some kind of setup.
But they both showed up.
Which is huge. Sheila Heen's work informed the process, focusing on controlling yourself, the environment, the boundaries. That stuff matters in conflict.
And the online part, the Facebook group, it started heated.
Oh, yeah. But nudging people towards self-control helped. And then Godfrey messaging Jeffcoat privately to help her navigate the online stuff.
Focusing on specific things like red flag laws, where maybe there was a sliver of common ground.
Exactly. Finding connection within the disagreement. And Bloodman, another participant, her view of NRA members shifted just through that human interaction. It had a lasting impact.
So a key technique the book offers for conflict is looping for understanding.
Yes, crucial technique. It's basically ask questions to clarify, repeat back what you heard in your own words, and check if you got it right. So if I'm hearing you correctly.
You're saying XYZ, is that right?
Exactly. Keep doing that loop until they say, yes, that's it. The goal isn't agreement, it's showing you see their perspective.
And other tactics. Acknowledge understanding, find specific agreement points, temper your claims.
All good conflict navigation tools. Don't overstate your case.
Okay, and quickly on online communication, it's tough, right? Fast, no nonverbal cues.
Yeah, ripe for misunderstanding. The book gives 4 quick tips for you online. Basically, dial up the politeness, dial down the sarcasm.
Because sarcasm bombs online.
Totally. And just generally use more gratitude, deference, greetings, apologies, maybe hedging language like I think or perhaps. Soften the edges.
Good advice. Okay, finally, the third type. Who are we? Conversations. All about social identity. Dr. Rosenblum and the vaccine-hesitant parents.
That really illustrates how facts often bounce off when something challenges someone's core identity. If someone sees themselves as, say, naturally skeptical of mainstream medicine.
More data isn't going to convince them. It might even backfire.
Right, because it feels like an attack on who they are.
And the stereotype threat research steals work with black students on the GRE, Gresky with female math students.
Yeah, showing how just reminding someone of a negative stereotype associated with their group can actually hurt their performance.
But the hopeful part was reminding them of their other identities, like being a student at a good college could neutralize the threat.
Exactly. We all contain multitudes. So the strategy is to draw out those multiple identities. Ask about background, allegiances, communities. Share yours too. Don't let someone get stuck in just one box.
Which ties into that amazing story about the soccer league in Iraq.
Karkosh, yeah. After ISIS. Bringing Christian and Muslim players together. Huge tension initially.
But they made it work.
Through 3 key things. First, structuring teams to emphasize non-religious identities like goalkeeper, captain, defender. Second, ensuring everyone was on equal footing, equal playing time. Third, focusing on a shared goal everyone cared about, winning games.
Relying on that shared identity and purpose, powerful.
It shows you can bridge divides by focusing on overlapping identities and common goals, even after intense conflict, which relates back to things like vaccine communication challenges. It's often about identity, not just data.
So wrapping this all up for you, the listener,
Yeah.
the big takeaway from Supercommunicators.
I think it's that real connection, meaningful communication. It's not just about what You say. It's about understanding what kind of conversation you're in. Facts, feelings, or identity.
And then consciously adapting, being intentional, being curious, being present.
Nailed it.
So here's a thought for you to take away. Think about a recent chat where you felt, well, disconnected or misunderstood. Ask yourself which of those three conversations was probably going on. What might have shifted if you'd recognized it or asked a different kind of question?
Yeah, just reflecting on that can be really insightful.
Definitely. This has just scratched the surface, obviously. Supercommunicators by Charles Duhigg is packed with more stories and strategies. Highly recommend checking it out.
Absolutely. Really practical stuff in there you can use immediately to build better connections.
And that brings our deep dive to a close for today. This was brought to you by Ben's Book Summaries. Thanks so much for tuning in.